so I was a young infantryman in the 101st Airborne Division, and my squad leader comes in and starts telling me a story. We had hostages, and we were going to go get them. So we assembled a special forces team to go in and rescue them. Pretty simple template. We're going to fly some airplanes out into the desert of a neighboring country. Giant bags of fuel in the back of these things. Some special forces ninjas in there, right? Helicopters are going to fly out, meet the airplanes. We're going to refuel the helicopters with the bags of fuel. Special forces guys are going to get on them. We're going to fly into the Badlands, rescue everybody, everybody goes home. Pretty simple template. Well, while they were moving one of the helicopters on the ground to refuel it, it clipped the tail of one of these aircraft, started on fire. The special forces guys happened to be sleeping in the back of that airplane. And one of those guys woke up and sees the plane filling with black smoke. He looks over, he sees all his friends jumping out the door. You ever woke up from a nap and you not know what time it is or how long you've been asleep? He thinks to himself, we must have taken off. We've taken fire. I have got to get out of this aircraft. He jumps up, runs the door, jumps out like he's going to parachute head first, slams straight into the ground. His boss walks up to him, helps him up. Outstanding, soldier. Outstanding. But I've got a question. When you got outside the airplane and you didn't have a parachute, what were you going to do? Dusts himself off, thinks about it for a second, says, Sergeant Major, one problem at a time. I'm Charlie 10, and this is Fireteam Followership. So what is followership? Followership is the ability to be led, the ability to take direction, the ability to be a part of a team or deliver on what is expected of you. So I learned the majority of everything I know about followership in the military, in a fire team, in an infantry fire team, which is the basic building block of an infantry unit. And so when I learned many of those lessons, it was because it was a prerequisite if I wanted to be a leader someday. You just simply could not be a leader if you were not a follower first. And so you had to learn these things. Some of them I learned through calisthenics. I didn't pick those to share with you today. The ones that I'm going to share with you, I think, are the most applicable to the fire service. And regardless of if you've ever served a day in the military, I believe that you can apply these and be successful at what you do. So Charlie 10. The story of Charlie 10 started at my fire academy at the Illinois Fire Service Institute. So the academy at that time was 6 weeks long. It was filled with early morning physical fitness sessions, followed by hard, intense training, usually in environments that were immediately dangerous to life and health. We had classroom sessions, and just to keep it spicy, we also had, classroom cleaning, bathroom cleaning, stuff like that. It was so much more than being taught to just put water on fire. We were legitimately tested in every domain, from physical fitness to work ethic, to academics, to character discernment. So as I stood out in that parking lot with 32 strangers, we were brought in to the bay there. We were broken into 3 companies. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. We were assigned roster numbers. I was Charlie 10. One of the first things that they taught us was how to sound off. Sounding off was a method of accountability for them. As you all know, accountability is paramount in the fire service, right? And it's important for us to learn that. So we would start with Alpha Company, Alpha 1, followed by Alpha 2, Alpha 3, until the last person in Alpha Company would sound off and say, Sir, all members of Alpha Company are present or accounted for. It would continue with Bravo Company and Charlie Company. Well, in the military, I'd done similar things before, but in the military, when you do this, you yell when you sound off with your roster number. Nobody really informed me that that wasn't a fire thing, too. So when we got to Charlie 10, I screamed as loud as I could, Charlie 10. So as the academy continued, we were sounding off more than I felt like we would breathe. But it was important. We were learning to keep track of each other. And every time we sounded off, I would scream Charlie 10. Some of these instructors, like at one point, one threatened to punch me in the throat if I didn't stop. It was affectionate, but so I learned to do this even when we weren't sounding off. So we would be going through the most miserable stuff. I went into the spring in Illinois. Sometimes it was snowing, sometimes it was ice. It was cold, hot, just miserable circumstances, advancing hoses through burning buildings, like just dog tired, exhausted. And then I would scream on the fifth floor of the tower, Charlie 10! And these goofballs that were with me would kind of crack a smile or laugh a little bit, right? And so Charlie 10 started to become more than just my roster number. So there's a speech that Admiral William McRaven gave at the University of Texas. He talks about make your bed and some stuff like that. One of the things he talks about is a time during Navy SEAL training when they're in the mud, and they're told they can get out of the mud when somebody quits. And they're just shivering and just miserable. And then somebody started singing in the mud, and it made it a little less horrible. That, in a way, is what Charlie 10 became. Because even when we were going through the hardest parts of Academy, my goofy self yelling Charlie 10 helped people push through. So Charlie 10, I think, is something that does not belong to me. It's a mindset that everybody can take in. Charlie 10 means that you're a hard worker. I promise you, if you're out there screaming stuff, nobody's going to care unless you're doing the work. You have to have a fair amount of EQ, emotional intelligence, right? Because you need to be able to see what your team needs from you. Sometimes they need you to be Charlie 10. Sometimes they need you to be screaming and motivational, right? Sometimes they need you to shut up and do work. All right? Being Charlie 10 means that you've got to stay humble, you've got to stay respectful, and above all, you've got to stay a student of the game. That's why it's such a high honor to me that the people I work with at the Illinois Fire Service Institute have allowed me to keep Charlie 10 as a part of me, and I sincerely encourage you to make Charlie 10 a part of you. So the problems that we see, the problems that we have are not the problem. The problem is the way we see the problem. We have all this stimulus that we take in from the world, and we get to decide how we're going to interpret that. You can be positive or you can be negative. We've got the greatest job in the world, bar none. I don't understand. I do not understand how you can come in and not absolutely love this job. And people who do not absolutely love this job, why are you doing it? Life is entirely too short to do something that you do not love. Too often, we, myself included, get stuck in this complaining trap where we just complain about the problems. And when we see ourselves get there, we have got to be solution-oriented. We have got to say, what is the solution to this problem? Find the solution and make the change. In your life right now today, find the solution, make the change. And if you can't change, you're going to come to a problem that you cannot change, that you cannot find a solution to. Change the way you see the problem. When you reach a problem that you cannot find the solution, change the way you see the problem. I know that sounds, it's easy for me to stand up here, right, and tell you, just change the way you see it. I'm going to give you a tool. And this tool is incredibly powerful. The characteristic spirit of a culture, era, or community as manifested in its beliefs and aspirations is an ethos. What is your ethos? Mine? I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit, and I will never leave a fallen comrade. This is the warrior ethos of the United States Army. I still use it to this day because it works for what I do. We do this for them. They are the mission. I will always place them first. I will never accept defeat, and I will not quit on them. To my brothers and sisters that I work with, I will never leave a fallen comrade. Doctrine is authoritative, but it requires judgment and application. We live in a time where information is readily available. Like, I think in this generation right now, more than any time before, information is readily available. Most of us carry a device around that we're addicted to, right? And we could look up anything in the world instead of using it to argue about SpongeBob and look up cat memes. SOGs, SOPs, policies are available on tablets and laptops inside apparatus, right? Years and years, decades worth of firefighting stuff is in articles, textbooks, all that's available on the internet. We should know those things. That's part of our job. We should learn them. We should read them, right? And then after we're done doing all that, we need to understand that that is knowing our job, knowing those books, right? But that's not necessarily understanding our job. Doctrine is authoritative but requires judgment, and application means that I take all that knowledge, those things that I know, and then I think about them, and then I apply them. This is a thinking man's game. You've got to be informed and have an understanding of the art of firefighting. I've said before in one of my blogs, if this was just about doctrine, I could program a robot to do this job. But I can't. Because we need the thinking firefighter out there who is going to get those SOPs and those SOGs from Chief. And Chief, I've read them, and I want you to trust me that I know them, but then I want you to trust me to not follow them when it's appropriate. Because we will come to a time where your SOG will fail. And if I do what that book tells me to do, I will die or one of them will die, and I will not fail them. We must learn, we must apply thinking, and we must develop an understanding. So before I tell you this last story, I've got to tell you a little bit about how we operate in Streeter. On the Streeter Fire Department, we have 4 guys on shift a day. If we get a working structure fire, 3 of us respond on the attack engine, 1 guy responds on a water supply engine. They set the pagers off for the other 10 guys to come in and help. Chief comes in his buggy as available. All right, so it's my last day of probation. I'm on shift. It's about 2 or 3 in the morning. We drop tones for an AFA. We go, head up, I think it's on the 6th floor, and burnt food. Clear the alarm, get back in the elevator, we're on our way down. Tones drop again, trailer fire. It came through on a still tone, and for working structure fires, we're normally toned out on the general. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm still pretty much asleep. On AFAs, 2 o'clock in the morning, I like to stay asleep, right? It's easier for me to fall back asleep. And the description that the dispatcher gave wasn't really worked up. It's just a trailer on fire. So here, I'm picturing, as I'm getting in the engine, a boat on fire in someone's backyard, or like a utility trailer. But we're not even going to get to make an interior attack. This is dumb. But let's go. So I'm in the engine, we're riding there. We had an update from dispatch. Neighbors are reporting there's somebody possibly in the trailer. Why is there somebody in the boat? Right? And then PD gets on scene. Hey, this isn't a trailer, this is a house. There's someone in there, and it's too hot for me to get in. My mind is screwed at this point, because I went from thinking I'm going to be fighting a boat fire to now I have a working structure fire with entrapment. So we get on scene, and my engineer, in an amazingly brilliant move, I can't give enough props to the crew that I work with. My engineer puts us in an alley on the C side of the structure. I jump off, pull the line, I see fire, load of fire on the D side communicating to an adjacent structure already. This thing's spreading. I pull the line past the house to the D side of the structure, knock down the little bit that's communicating right, get it stopped there, pull back, and then there's a door on the BC corner. I have a beautiful Z pattern in my hose that it doesn't get any better than that, right? So now I mask up. My captain's there. He's finished his 360. We mask up. We get inside, and he's going first. He's in front of the hose line, and I'm just knocking fire down. There's a heavy body of fire in there as he's advancing through this thing, right? We make it through the living room, through the kitchen. We're in the hallway, right? And we're going down this hallway, and I feel somebody run into the back of me on the hose line. I turn around, it's my engineer. So God's pumping now, okay? All right? And so we go into the bedroom. My captain goes straight into the middle of the room with the tick. I take the left wall. My engineer takes the right wall. My engineer yells out, "I got him, he's breathing." Superhuman strength, 300-pound dude in a 150-pound rover chair. They pull this thing away from the wall, get this guy out of it, and get him on the ground. I pull out my webbing, gonna do a good firefighter thing, comes out in a ball of mess. So I grab him up underneath his arms, get him in that good old EMS carry. Now I'm standing up, I got a hold of him, and I'm facing backwards. So I get that hose line in between my feet like this, and I monorail it right out of there, carrying him out. My engineer's got him by the legs, I've got him by the body. We get outside, private ambulance crew's there, they meet us, we put him on the cot. They check, no pulse, not breathing, starting CPR. Another fun fact about my shift in Streeter, I'm the only medic. Chief looks at me and says, "Levy, you're going with him." I'm stripping off an air pack as they're starting CPR, starting compressions as we're rolling out to the ambulance, jumping the ambulance. I work this guy with the ambulance crew from the house on fire all the way into the ER, where they eventually ceased resuscitation efforts and he died. I went and found the ambulance guys. I was like, "Hey, I need you guys to give me a ride back out to the fire." They're like, "You're going back?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, there's only 14 of us, homie. There's still work to be done. I got to go back." Went back out. My last day on probation ended rolling hose that morning. That was my culminating moment of my probationary year. That was my time. That was my ability to take everything that the crew had invested in me over that year and everything my captain had invested in me, and that test, that was that test. I felt such an incredible sense of camaraderie. It was amazing. It was amazing to be able to exist in the moment. So, the steps for followership are simple, but they're not easy. Remember, no matter how big, one problem at a time. Develop a positive mindset. Develop an understanding of the art of firefighting, and then be ready for your moment. If you can do these things, you will be successful as a follower, and you will have built a great foundation on which to build your life as a leader. My name is Charlie Ten, and this has been Fireteam Followership. Thank you.